first reading for this morning is from 1 Kings. Then the word of the Lord came to him, saying, Go to Zarephath, which belonged to Sidon, and live there. For I have commanded a widow there to feed you. So he set out and went to Zarephath. When he came to the gate of the town, a widow was there gathering sticks. He called to her and said, Bring me a little water in a vessel, so that I may drink. As she was going to bring it, he called to her, Bring me a morsel of bread in your hand. But she said, As the Lord your God lives, I have nothing baking, only a handful of meal in my jar, and a little oil in a jug. I am now gathering a couple of sticks so that I may go home and prepare it for myself and my son, that we may eat and die. Elijah said to her, Do not be afraid. Go and do as you have said. But first make me a little morsel of cake of it and bring it to me. And afterwards make something for yourself and your son. For thus says the Lord your God, the God of Israel, the jar of meal will not be empty, and the jug of oil will not fail, until the day that the Lord sends rain on the earth. She went and did as Elijah said, so that she, as well as her household, ate for many days. The jar of meal was not empty, neither did the jug of oil fail, according to the word of the Lord that he spoke through Elijah. And then a reading from the Gospel according to John. 6 days before the Passover, Jesus came to Bethany, the home of Lazarus, who he had raised from the dead. There they gave him a dinner for him. Martha served, and Lazarus was one of those at the table with him. Mary took a pound of costly perfume and made pure nard, anointed Jesus' feet, and wiped them with her hair. The house was filled with fragrance of the perfume. But Judas Iscariot, one of his disciples, said, Why is this perfume not sold for 300 denarii and the money given to the poor? He said this not because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief, and he kept a common purse and used to steal from it what was put into it. Jesus said, Leave her alone. She brought it that it might keep it for the day of my burial. You will always have the poor with you, but you do not always have me. When the great crowd of Jews learned that he was there, they came not only because of Jesus, but also because they wanted to see Lazarus, whom he had raised from the dead. So the chief priests planned to put Lazarus to death as well, since it was on the account of him that many of the Jews were deserting and were believing in Jesus. May God bless to us the reading and hearing of his holy word. Thanks be to God. May God empower the word within us. Let us pray. Speak to us, O Lord, your saving word. Fill us with your Holy Spirit and feed us with the bread of life. Amen. I'm probably going to be a little more reflective than I am going to be prophetic, because I was awake this morning at 3:30, oh boy, and could not go back to sleep. So I'm a wee bit tired today. I want to reflect on the reading from 1 Kings, and there's a little bit in my feasting of the word that I'd like to share with you. driven by conflict and urgent need, we thirst for miracles. The story of Elijah and the widow Zarephath dramatizes the miracle of divine compassion that unfolds when we dare to invite a prophetic word into our midst. In this story, when we kind of go through the first reading, we sort of miss what's actually going on. It sounds as if he is being very bold when he says to her, "Go get me something to drink, and then while you're there, bake something for me." Now she was out gathering sticks so that she might be able to build a fire, knowing full well when she got home that there would be enough for them to eat for that day. And she was preparing her family for death, because she knew not long after that they would not have anything to eat. So as she was gathering sticks on this day, this man comes out of the wilderness and encounters her in that moment. And he looked wild and untamed. And doesn't that remind us of John the Baptist, who looked wild and untamed? And we don't know what other conversation that they may have had, but she actually did as he asked of her, but questioned him when he wanted something to eat. Because she knew if I bake something for him, there will be nothing for us. But she did. And so, for me, the first thing that we need to talk about is hospitality. How do we welcome strangers who might look wild and unkempt? How do we welcome them when they come and ask, "Can you give me something to eat?" Now, I know I've shared this story with you many times, and encountering, especially when I work with homeless men, at no point did I ever hear them ever say, "When I grow up, I want to be homeless so I can beg for food." And in my time with them, I encountered in many of them this deep spirituality that I don't often see. They trusted in the people who were running the shelter that when they would come in for the evening, that there would be something for them to eat. And they trusted the shelter that when they woke up from the next day, because it was an overnight shelter, that there would be breakfast for them. And they trusted that at lunchtime, they would have a sandwich to take with them for the day. So when we engage the story of the widow, we engage this understanding of hospitality. How do we welcome those who are in need? The second part of the story, I think, is very human with the widow, who, by the way, has no name, which often is the case in biblical stories. She struggled with her humanness. She knew exactly how much food she had, that her jar of oil would soon be empty, and her her jug would not be filled, that she had very little to make a cake and bake it. And so I think that we hear in her the story of, if I give to you, there won't be anything left for me. She had this need to hold back and not allow this stranger who she didn't know to want to take that little morsel left that she had. And she says, when I go home, I have enough to prepare for myself and my son, that we may eat it, and then we will die. Elisha said to her, do not be afraid. Do not be afraid. Don't hold back what you have for only yourself, but open your heart in a way that it will bring something amazing. Do we hold back in our hearts? Do we keep what we have for ourselves? Do we ever think about sharing it for others? And do we ever trust God enough to not be afraid? Fear is a common, I would call, problem in our culture today. We fear lots of things. We fear people who aren't like us, who don't look like us, who don't think like us, who don't believe like us. And we fear that we won't ever have enough. We have been conditioned by a society that tells us the more we have, the better we will be. The more we have, the more important we will become. And we fill ourselves up with stuff that never satisfies who we are and what we need. And in our stewardship report for this morning, we might fear that we don't have enough. When you look at it on the surface, it is indeed bleak. But Elijah says to the woman, and this is something we should hear for ourselves over and over and over again, do not be afraid. Go and do as I have said. But first make me a little cake and bring it to me. Afterwards, something for yourself and your son. The jar of meal will not be empty, and the jug of oil will not fail. If we allow ourselves to open our hearts, we have no reason to be afraid. This is a story about spirituality. How do we trust? How do we allow ourselves to trust fully? And when we develop a spirituality, we trust automatically. We don't have to be told to not be afraid. So whatever the situation is for this congregation at this moment, I say to you, do not be afraid. Our jar of meal will not be empty, and our jug of oil will not fail if we trust in God. And the story goes on where it says that she went and did as Elijah said. This stranger who came to her unkempt, who she did not brought a message from God, and she went and did as he asked. She, as well as he, and her household ate for many days, according to the word of the Lord that he spoke to Elijah. The word of God is always with us, and God is always speaking to us and inviting us to step out in faith. To step out in faith in a way that shows that we welcome with hospitality those who are in need. We welcome with hospitality those who need a word of hope. We welcome with hospitality those who come to the church seeking refuge and strength and hope. The other day I was meeting with the clergy group, the Covenant clergy group, and I was just kind of expressing my frustration and my concern and my love for Centralia and sometimes my disappointment. And I feel like since it's my hometown, I can express my disappointment. And one of the clergy looked at me and he said, "Are you running for political office?" And I stopped and I'm like, oh good heavens, no. That would scare me to death. That would not be something I ever would want to do, but for some people that works. And I kind of laughed and I said, well, the one thing that I think that we need to do in this community is offer people hope. And we need to be able to trust God enough to be creative and think about things that we might need to do differently that might bring in employment that offers people hope. We were talking about the drug problem that we have. And there's a term I hate. And that's the term meth head. I hate that term. Because no one ever grows up to say, I want to be a meth head. The environment in which they live is not a place where they can seek hope, where they can seek a way to change their life and turn it around. And I'm not saying everybody will do that. But if we trust God and if we are not afraid, we are bold enough to step out and have conversation and put our political differences aside and make a way. Of course, this town is struggling with the various things that they lost that did bring hope, the jobs that were secure, where people could work for a company and know that they could work there until they retired. That was the Centralia I grew up in. That was the town that I know. But it's not. And we're not. And the world is not what it was many years ago. When I was growing up, my dad had a garden that you would think that he had a field. It was a lot. But he figured out a way to not only feed his family, which was a wife and 4 kids, and a mother-in-law and his mother, but he figured out a way also to feed the community. How he got all of that out of one plot of ground will always amaze me. And we always had enough to can and freeze, and so through the winter, we had food to eat. He never lost his understanding. And where I got that from, we feed those who are in need. We care for those who need something. If we have it, we give it and trust God. We are at a crossroads, not only our community, but also the Protestant church. We're at a crossroad where it's time for us to listen to the words of God and say, we will trust you enough to step out in a way that changes how we function as a church and how we function as a community. And as I said to my group of clergy colleagues on that day, it is up to the church to change the dynamic in which people live in this community. It is up to us to make a difference. For we are people of God, we are people of Jesus, we are people who live out our spirituality. And we should do it each and every day in the communities that we live that changes the way in which people live. So that we can bring them hope. And I hope that whoever, well, we know who has been elected, but I hope that they hear the voice of God in their direction. But it should not keep the church from doing what needs to be done. So we set out, and we go, and we comfort, and we feed. For we know if we do, we know if we trust God, we know that our jar of meal will not be empty, neither our jug of oil, because God will provide if the church is living out its faith. May all that we do be to glory and praise for our God. Amen.